I'm only taking one step at a time towards healing myself. I had to get out, I found a way out. No more living in pain or misery. It's all about protecting my energy. Keep the negative away from me, because I am just keeping my peace. Cut off everything that no longer was serving me, and I chose to start loving myself. I walk in my purpose, no looking back, I'm only going within. B.O. standing there, a better version of me. I must say that I'm proud of me. It's not about how you feel, I'm living proof that God is real. So let me show you how to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, cause I came a long way. My journey isn't yet complete, that's what it look like to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, I'm proud of myself. It's nothing to it, you can do it, all you gotta do is just fight through it. Create a soul, create a soul, create a soul. Just fight through it. Create a soul, create a soul, create a soul, create a soul, yeah, yeah.
Welcome to Pain to Purpose podcast, where we have open discussions to heal together as a community. Today, we're on episode 41, and we're talking about sex addiction, being delivered from a sex addiction. And our special guest is Nicole Lewis. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. How are you today?
I am doing pretty good.
Good.
Kind of
I'm
cold.
glad. Say that one more time.
That it's kind of cold where I'm at.
Okay. Well, I'm
How's
glad
the weather?
that you... Go ahead.
How's the weather where you're at?
It's a little chilly, but it's all right. Not as cold as where you are. But thanks for asking. I'm glad that you came onto the show to share your story. I know that it'll definitely help someone. So we're going to go ahead and get right on into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Nicole Lewis. I have been speaking almost 17 years now. I'm telling my life story and sharing that experience turned into me writing a book. And then now I also teach etiquette classes. I do some life coaching and sex addiction coaching. A little bit about it.
Okay. So what's the pain that pushed you to your purpose?
Honestly, if you can tell by my title, the name of my company is I Love Me Enterprises. It was a lack of love that I had for myself. So my journey kind of started very, very early on. From the age, I want to say from the age of 7 on, I've been on my own. I had my first kid at 13. That led me into a different life than what I was living prior to my son. And then as time went on, I graduated high school with new ideas and new ambitions, right? I ran
Wait,
into
when you got pregnant, you said at 13, what type of support did you have?
not a whole lot of support. I had kind of been bounced around a lot prior to that. Living, I've been in a mental institution. I was in one for about a year. I lived with my grandmother. I went through a lot of trauma
Okay.
up until that point in my
Okay.
life. I was raped by my uncle at 7, at gunpoint, and it's just been like a lot of things after that.
Okay. And so after high school, what was it like?
Well, I'll kind of backtrack just a little bit.
Okay.
Um, so at the age of 10, we were homeless, living out of a car. At the age of 11, I went to go stay with my father, who I hadn't seen in years. Moved back in with my mom at the age of 12. Got pregnant with my son at 12. Had him at 13. 3 months after he was born, I was charged with attempted murder and willful injury. That's a whole another story within itself. Um, so I was removed from the home. I was able to keep my son and continue my journey with going to school, and I became very active in church. I didn't want to be the typical teen mom where having a whole bunch of kids, which is a lot of my friends, that's what they were doing.
Mhm.
So I put my head down, got through school, worked a full-time job, graduated with my son, and my best friend, who I had started having sex with when I was 5. That'll tie into what we'll talk about a little bit later. But
Your your best friend, you said?
yep, my best friend. Um, so his mom and my mom were best friends.
Okay.
And growing up the way that I did, I didn't have a lot of consistency in my life.
Okay.
Um, so it was very interesting, our bond that we created. He was 6 and I was 5 when we started having sex. So very, very early on in life. And moving here and there, we lost touch with each other from time to time, but we still had this real strong bond with each other. And after I had my son, I hadn't seen him since my son was like a year old. And so it had been like now 4 years. I just graduated high school, was getting ready to go to college, and I got word that he had been killed. So he died in his mom's arms. I came
Um,
back for the funeral, and I ran into my son's father, who was not my best friend, but um, I thought God had gave him to me.
mhm.
I went through a lot of different things growing up, but my sex addiction didn't actually stem from that trauma. It contributed to how I feel about myself. And for the longest time, I just felt like I wasn't loved and um, I wasn't worthy of somebody loving or caring for me. So the only thing I thought I could give somebody was my body.
Okay.
So I get pregnant with my second child with him. And I'm thinking God sent him to me. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. I wanted all my kids to be by the same guy.
Mhm.
And what ended up
That's
happening,
understandable.
yeah, uh, it's interesting how we fall in love with the idea of being in love, right?
Mhm.
And so I was, yay, finally somebody loves me, somebody cares about me. We're gonna have this baby. We're gonna get married. I'm living
Mhm.
in this fantasy world. And then he says, I don't want you no more. Just out the blue, I don't want you no more. While I'm pregnant with our second child. That completely devastated me. First, I will say because I didn't have family that made me feel loved or that I was wanted. And then secondly, he said all the right things,
Mhm.
right?
I
I
think a
love
lot
you,
of women, go through that, looking for love in all the wrong places.
definitely. And the interesting thing is that I didn't pay attention to the fact that I had grown. There's things that I wasn't interested in anymore that he was interested in.
Okay.
So he was still for lack of better terms, he was still in the street, and I was trying to go to college and do something better for me and my kids.
Okay.
Two totally different paths, but I thought, well, God
Right.
sent him for a reason, so I'm supposed to be in this relationship, and I'm forcing the relationship. So much so that when he told me, I don't want to be with you anymore, I said, okay, well, you can still sleep with me.
Mm,
That was the moment that my sex addiction actually kicked in. When I made the decision that, okay, I'm not worthy of love, but I'm going to give you my body in exchange for the idea that I'm going to get love.
okay. So how long did that relationship last
Mm, I say maybe 7 months.
with the idea?
Yep. And I still pushed it. So I would compromise myself the whole time. So in essence, I drug it out the full 9 months of my pregnancy. With
Okay.
him being gone, he'll be gone for a week. He'll come back, and I'll just tell him, "Well, just have sex with me. I know you don't want to be with me, but just have sex with me."
So you were honest with him.
I was,
Okay.
and that became our relationship. So when I look at what a relationship actually is, and what we had was an extended hookup
Mhm.
under the illusion that I was in love with him.
So at what point did things change for you? When did you come to a point where you told him enough is enough? I deserve more.
I would say it took years for me to come to that point.
Okay.
So I would I would go into relationships with the idea that this is temporary anyways because he's going to come back to me. He loves me. These other people don't. These other people don't care about me. And it
So it
would
was like
be,
a stronghold.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And each person that I slept with, I felt worse about myself because secretly I wanted to
Mhm.
be a wife. Secretly, I just wanted to be a mom. I just wanted to have that family that I never had. And so I kept holding on to that idea that we'll be together eventually. Mind you, I found out when my daughter was like, I think she was like 2 weeks old, maybe.
Mhm.
I found out that he had already moved on. He's actually been with that lady for 24 years now.
Wait, he's been with her for 24 years now, or he had already been?
No, so he met her, I guess, through a family friend or something while I was pregnant. So this whole time where he was gone for 5 days or 7 days, he was with her.
Okay, gotcha.
But I still would hold on to the idea that eventually he's going to leave her and come back to me. They end up having a child together. I'm still thinking of eventually he's going to come back to me. So I'm not going to keep guys around. I'm just going to, I'll date this person or I'll sleep with this person for the time being. What ended up happening is I ended up getting into a space where I would try to have a relationship with somebody and then that relationship would go bad. It would just reinforce that you're not lovable. Nobody's going to really love you or care for you. Nobody really wants you to be their wife. Nobody wants you to be with them.
So you were attracting the same type of person each time you got in a relationship
Yeah.
because you hadn't done the work within yourself to know that you're loved and you're worthy and you're unique just the way God made you.
Yeah, exactly. And it was partially intentional. It was intentional because I knew they were placeholders.
Mhm.
So I didn't want to get into a real serious situation where I really gave them all of me. So I also learned in that process, I didn't share my feelings. I didn't really share my thoughts. If I did, the one time that I did do that was a situation. I had started dating a guy shortly after my daughter was born.
Mhm.
I had to move because I was being evicted. He paid for my deposit. He seemed like a really nice guy. And I mentioned that I wanted to
They're
be
all nice at the beginning, right?
yes, definitely. Definitely. I have met quite a few of those Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Right.
And after I told him that I wanted to be a dancer, his response to me was, well, you can be a stripper or you can be a prostitute for me. And my
Mm.
thought immediate was, well, that's not what I said. I said I wanted to be a dancer so I can make money to take care of my children. That's what my mind was.
Mhm.
He then raped me. I guess that's how he um, gets his girl, whatever that world is. Um, Thankfully, I didn't get into that world. Um, but that shut me down again. Now I really don't want to tell you anything about me. I don't want to share any thoughts that I have because it was just a thought. It wasn't something I was actively going to go do. It wasn't something I was pursuing. It was just a thought that I had. So with that, I then brought in another guy to get rid of him. And then that's when I started having multiple guys. So now I'm having Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday guys. I got this guy on Monday. I got this guy on Tuesday. I got this guy on Wednesday. This person does this. This person does that. This person does this. I'm going to spread myself amongst these other people because then I don't have to be me 100%. And I don't have to worry about being hurt. And I know that they're not going to love me. I know that they're not going to want me to be their wife. But eventually, my baby daddy's going to come back. Eventually, he's going to come back and want me.
So even through that process, you still thought that he was going to come back.
I did. I did. And in that process, my thought was, I still wanted to be a wife, but I knew everybody that I had, every person that came through, was pushing me further and further away from that. And it was thinking me, I was a functional addict, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
My kids never seen guys coming in and out the house. I made sure of that. So if I had a guy over, it was when the kids wasn't home. Either they were at daycare, they was at school, they was at their grandmother's house, but they wasn't home. So
Do you
they
feel
didn't
like you were trying to prove a point to yourself too?
kind of. It's it's this battle with our um, with my ego and my pride. My pride being, yeah, I can get any guy I want, right? I can walk down the street and pick up a guy if I really wanted to. I can do that, and that's the ego kicking
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
In the meantime, my spirit was crying out and saying, "This is not what you want. That you want to be loved. You just want somebody to sometimes just hug you, ask you
Mhm.
how you're doing, and really care about how you're doing, or just feeling safe." And I
So
didn't.
let's go back for a second. I know that
mm,
you said you lived with your mom for a little bit, you lived with your dad for a little bit. Did you ever tell them how you felt about yourself? Or were you just silent through all that too? Like, did you were your parents affectionate? Was your father loving?
So my father, I didn't see him very much.
Okay.
Honestly, I had seen him, like, my parents got a divorce when I was 2, and I seen him up until, I want to say maybe 5 or 6, and then I hadn't seen him again until I was 12, until I was 11, right before my 12th birthday. So I didn't
Okay.
really grow up around my father. My mom was a single mom. She
Hmm.
usually worked 2 or 3 jobs, so she was always busy. So I didn't grow up with getting hugs or getting loved on.
The reason why I asked you that is because when a baby is born, the first man that they see is the one that they learn to love most of the time. I mean, that could be an uncle, or if the daddy's not around, or a grandfather or somebody. Um, but I hear a lot of women say that they didn't have their father in their life, and so they didn't know what it was like to feel that love. So they accepted certain things from men because they were looking for love.
Yeah, it's very interesting because for me, um, I didn't really grow up with a lot of guys around me. My mom always dated married men, so I didn't get to see that aspect of things.
Mhm,
So relationships that I did see was I seen a lot of abusive relationships.
mhm.
I seen a lot of married men who cheat on their wives. I didn't really see any healthy relationships outside of my fantasy came from when I watched movies. That's what I want my relationship to look like. This is what I want my relationship to look like.
Which we know they're not fairy tales. It's just a movie. And marriage is work. Relationships is work. Period. Even if you're
Yeah,
not married, it's work.
definitely, definitely. So, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, as I'm going through this rotation, I end up getting caught up with another kid.
Mhm,
Um, so, I found myself in a place that I never thought I would be, which was dating somebody that was already in a relationship with somebody else. That was the one thing I told myself I would never do. I'm not dating somebody or having sex with somebody or seeing somebody or even entertaining that thought because that means if they're not going to be faithful to that person, they're not going to be faithful to me.
So listen, this is what I learned. Never say never because you don't know what you would do in that moment. Literally. Like things that we grow up saying we would never do or we see somebody else do. And we're like, I would never do that. But you don't know what you would do if you were in that situation.
Yeah, definitely. And the one thing that you say I will never ends up being something you will do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in that process of me starting to date this gentleman, I started working. So I'm having like odd and end type jobs. There's a couple of like rules that I had to how I operated, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to sleep with somebody I work with, and I'm not going to sleep with somebody that's in a relationship. Those two, because I want to keep my life secret of all these
Mhm.
guys that I'm dealing with. I want that to be secret. I don't want nobody to know about that because I feel like if you know about that, then I'm definitely not going to be a wife to anybody because nobody wants to be with somebody who has a high body count. So I end up um, as time goes on and how I feel about myself is getting lower and lower. I end up in an abusive relationship and I end up having to send my kids to live with my mom so that they would be protected because this guy was a little crazy and I didn't know if my kids were safe just being at home with me.
Okay.
So I start dancing. I start wilding out because I'm now just about 20 years old. And for the first time, now, mind you, I had my first kid at 13, and I
Mm-hmm.
was a very responsible parent, extremely responsible. And my mom would always tell me, you need to go have fun, you need to go do things. I'm like, no, mom, I need to work and I got to take care of my kids. And in that process, I'm racking up more and more guys, more and more guys, more and more guys. Then I start sleeping with guys from the strip club. And then I end up leaving that because I don't know about you, but I don't like people touching me randomly. And being a stripper, you've kind of just opened up the door for them to do whatever they want to, basically, to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a guy that was just being very disrespectful towards me, and it just broke me. For me, I was just like, no, I'm done with this. I don't care if I got to work 3 jobs. I can't deal with this lifestyle.
Well, you had already been through a situation from childhood trauma, and then you go to your adulthood and you haven't healed from that childhood trauma. So now you're hurting and you have more trauma on top of that. And then getting into the strip club, that's a whole nother realm of things. So that's just like more trauma. So you
Yep,
came to your
exactly.
breaking point.
So I started working doing security.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you remember, this is about the time when they were redoing the airport security right after like the 9/11 stuff. And they started redoing all the national security for the airports.
Mm-hmm.
So I was security for the airports.
Okay.
It was very interesting. Well, at this time, I've got this rotation of guys. And now I'm at a space where even that rotation is not enough. So now I'm really leaning on sex as my official crutch, as this is what I do when I'm bored. This is what I do when I get sad, when I get mad, when I start thinking about my life and where my life is. For me to get up in the morning and start, like, before I could even function, before I could get up and actually get my day going, I started masturbating regularly, to the point where I've got I've got one guy coming in, masturbate, and I got the next guy coming in. So it was this constant rotation because now my kids aren't at home, so I don't have that time to be a mom in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't mean that I wasn't like going to go visit my kids and stuff like that, but when I'm at home, it's kind of like a free for all.
So when this is going on, did you ever reach out to anybody? Did you ever have any family members that were in church and took you to church or pray with you through this?
So it's interesting that you asked that question. So in high school, I was very, very active in church.
Mm-hmm.
I was being celibate. I was, walking on the right side of the road, basically. Um, and what ended up happening from my experience was, first it started with my bus driver. I had mentioned, at this time I was 16, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any friends. It was just literally me, my son. I go to work, I go to school, I go to church. That's what my
Okay.
routine was. And he asked me, or I had mentioned that I was getting lonely. Like,
Okay.
I didn't have nobody to go to the movies with. This is what my thoughts are. I don't have nobody to just hang out with. I'm just talking to my 2-year-old, 3-year-old at this point. And it's that or church people. And there's nothing wrong with church people, but having people my age to
Yeah.
just hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
And his response was, "Well, it's okay to masturbate." I was like, "Oh, that's not what I was talking about." So it made me hesitant about being on the church van. Then I was very heavy in the church choir. The choir director would take me. He was almost kind of like, for me, he was like a dad figure. So
Mhm.
if I needed a ride somewhere, he'd take me to go to this place, or my reverend, he would watch my son a lot. So there was some men in the church that was taking up that space that I needed as a father figure. My choir director came to my apartment one day because I was living on my own at this point, and he's like, "Well, if my wife dies," and so it started opening up this door that's all that they see me as somebody that's out here just having sex with a bunch of people. So when I did start actually doing it, the church was the last place I wanted to go.
I
And
think this is my own personal opinion.
uh-huh,
And to our audience, this is nothing against a certain church or religion or anything like that. But I really believe that people stake out their victims. They know how vulnerable they are. They know when they have low self esteem. It's a certain criteria they look for,
definitely,
and that's what they go after, whether they're
definitely.
in church or out of church. And if they're in church, sometimes people are manipulative and they change words and different things to make you think that it's okay.
Yep, they definitely. And that was, it wasn't like I had gave up on God. I will say that God has been a staple in my life this
Because
entire process.
he will never leave you nor forsake you.
Exactly. And my and going through everything that I went through, my thought was always, there's a reason for it. There's a reason why I'm going through this. May not understand it right at this moment, but there's a reason for it. There's a reason why I'm still here. There's a reason why I've been in situations where honestly I should have probably died. There's no way that if it wasn't for God looking out for me, I wouldn't be here 100%.
Okay. So tell us about when you got to the point to get delivered from all of this. What did that look like for you?
So I had my third kid, and I had ended up in a situation where I lost custody of all three of my kids.
And you were how old at that time?
21.
Okay.
And I feel like I was doing everything I needed to do. I was homeless at the time, so that's one of the biggest reasons why the kids were removed from my home.
Mhm.
And if anybody's ever experienced that where your kids have been removed, they give you a timeline, how long you how long you have to get your kids back. So I'm going through dealing with all the traumas and then losing my children and losing my home and dealing with the court system and feeling like nobody loves me, nobody cares. For me, it was confirmation. My kids were taken from me because I must be a bad mom. I must be a nobody. In the meantime, I am having sex with all these different random guys, trying to cope. So, in between going to visits, going to work, going to class, going to different parenting classes, and anything else that they have me going through, I'm picking up these random guys. And now it's to a point where I don't know their names anymore. I can care less to find out what their names are. It's like going into a crowd and saying, I want that one, and picking them up like they're a candy bar off the shelf or something. And what my turning point was, I was driving down the street cussing at somebody else because our sex session wasn't what I thought it was supposed to be. So I'm yelling at them. Another guy pulls over in front of me and cuts me off because I guess I'm driving too slow. I'm not speeding, which is weird. And he's like, "Hey, well, what's going on with you?" And I'm like, "I just need sex." And that's what my response was. So he offers, hey, well, I can help you with that. I go to his house. Mind you, I don't even know what he looks like. I don't know what kind of car he drives. I don't know nothing about this man whatsoever. So I go to some random house. I don't know if that's even his house. We have sex, and I leave a letter next to his bed. Thank you for a good time, Nikki.
Mm.
And I drive off.
Wow.
I think that I had lost my wallet at his house. So I try to remember where I was. I'm pretty good at like landmarks and stuff like that. So I pulled back up to the house. I couldn't even ask for the person's name. All I could say was, hey, I think I might have left my wallet here.
Oh, wow.
And the person was like, no, you didn't leave anything. I don't even know if that was the person I had slept with. I don't know. So I drove away. And as I'm driving, I thought to myself, women don't do a thank you for a good time note. That's not what women do. How did I get to a space where this is what men do in my mind? This
Mhm.
is not what a wife does. This is not even what a girlfriend does. This is not what a mom does. Who does this? Just at that time, Tiger Woods has started coming out about his sex addiction.
Okay.
And so they were talking about that on the radio. And I was like, maybe that's what my problem is.
So you didn't even realize that it was a sex addiction. You just looked at it as this is what I want, and this is what I need, and I'm gonna go
Yep.
for it.
Yep. Because it's not hurting nobody. The only person that's really truly hurting is me. Now, in hindsight, as I've done a lot of my healing, I recognize that I hurt a lot of guys in that process too,
Mm,
because I was the predator. I was preying on them just as much as they was preying on me.
and hurt people hurt people.
Yep, exactly. So
Okay.
I made a decision that I would go to therapy and try working it out that way, right? Because I was too afraid to go to church, honestly. I was afraid of where I was at if I went back to church in that state, that it would just completely break me.
So do you think they were going to judge you if you went back to the church house?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And it's supposed to be a place of love and acceptance. And so I
Mhm.
was afraid that they wouldn't accept me.
Okay.
So I started going to therapy. I think I was 3 sessions in on my therapy. I'm thinking things are kind of going okay. You're still in that introductory phase where they're getting to know you or you're getting to know them. On my third session, my therapist, who was a male, asked me, hey, would you show me, help me pick out what he asked? He asked me to pick out a sex toy for his wife
Wait, at your therapy session?
at my therapy session.
Okay.
For me, in that specific moment, that made me feel like this is literally all I have to offer the world.
Mhm.
This is what everybody sees me as. This is what I'm going to be.
Well, and that's a hard thing. Like you go to therapy to get the help you need, and then your therapist is asking you for something that like you're dealing with a situation right now. And what they're asking you for is what you've already been doing. So that's not helping. So I see how that could cause a problem.
Yeah. So that just put me down even further in my spiral. Meanwhile, I'm working an overnight job. I'm going to school during the daytime. I'm doing my visits with my kids. I'm going to parenting classes. and I meet this guy at work. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned earlier that you noticed that I pick specific guys to sleep with.
Did I say that?
So I meet this guy at work who seems super nerdy. He's a technician for the internet.
Because he's not going to tell you no. He's going to go for it.
And he's just persistent on trying to get my attention. And I'm so mean to him. And then one night,
Because you know you
my
can't
roster of
see.
guys aren't answering. And he had this guy at work, it just so happened to give me his business card because I was going to school for business and he needed a business plan for his business. So that's how we were originally supposed to link up. And I said, it's 2:00 in the morning. I
And
wonder if
nobody
he's
told
up.
about your business plan at 2:00 in the morning.
I had other plans. So my thought was I needed my fix for the night. I didn't want to end my night without my fix. My toys wasn't working. And obviously therapy wasn't working. So hey, can you come out? I took him to an adult store to get him in the mood. We ended up sleeping together that evening. I did not know that he was on his journey of celibacy.
So the therapist trying to get you to buy something for his wife, and you already dealing with that situation. You meet a guy that is in his journey, on his journey, and then you now talk him into pulling away from his journey.
Yep.
Okay.
And that has been the longest one night stand I've ever had.
So that's the one that you got married to.
Yep. And it has been an amazing healing journey. He has really given me that space to be safe enough, to be vulnerable enough to share everything that I've ever been through
Wow.
and start facing all the different people. We live in a small town. Well, it's kind of small. We live in Omaha, Nebraska, so it's the smallest big town. So a lot of people know people, and you run into people. And so we've had people run up to us in the lifestyle of my sex addiction. They knew me by Nikki, and so they would run up and be like, "Nikki, where you been at?" And they're thinking that they're gonna get that same reaction from me that they used to get.
Okay. The old Nikki.
And yeah,
This the
so
brand new Nikki.
this is a Nicole now.
All right. All right.
So my husband, who before he became my husband, he became my best friend. He invited me to church, and that's really where I started my healing journey, honestly. We was praying a lot. We did a lot of fasting. I did a lot of crying. I did a lot of confessions. Just that process where they talk about the cleansing process was a full process. Now, nobody knew exactly the full process that we were going through because we were doing it together. And the crazy thing is we slept in the same bed together, and a situation had happened, I want to say 3 months into our relationship. And I put in air quotes because it wasn't official. We were just sleeping together. And then he's like, okay, I'm supposed to be on the celibacy journey, and I really need to get back to that. And you can either join me on this journey or you can't come over after a certain time, basically. And it was oddly enough, he gave me another option and he was walking that journey with me. So we met in September. We had our first hookup in October. We made that decision in December. And then by February, he had started talking about marriage.
Wow.
We got married a year to the date of our very first interaction. So that following October, we got married, and we've been married now this is our 20th year.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now that is a story. Okay. So if you could leave any gems with our audience, what would you leave with them?
I say the most important thing is to tell your truth. Be honest with yourself. Find somebody that you can talk to and that you can share your truths with, and love yourself.
Yes, yes. And I think there's no think to it. What's so important is that you do love yourself so you understand who you are and that you don't need a man, but you may want a man. And you understand that when you go through your healing process, then you start to understand that. So, yes.
Definitely.
Is there any special quotes that you go by or favorite scripture that you have?
Um, Everything has a reason, and there's always a purpose.
Yes. Yes. Well, I thank you again for coming on to the podcast to share your story. I pray that this has helped someone out there. I'm sure that it has. For our audience, don't forget that we have our Pain to Purpose podcast t-shirts as well as our tumblers. You can email me for those. And if you would like to be on the podcast, you can also email me at creativesoul.business@gmail.com. And do not forget, I have 3 books on Amazon. The first book is Tears of a Shattered Heart. And the second book is an affirmation coloring book. And the third book is also an affirmation coloring book. So we have Tears of a Shattered Heart. Then we have Wonderfully Made Affirmation Coloring Book. Then we have Fearfully Made Affirmation Coloring Book. So run on over to Amazon and purchase. And do not forget, it's only pain until you realize your purpose and start your healing journey. I'll see you next time.